Man, I am very proud to announce our guest today because this is crazy, man. As far as ROH goes, we've been lucking out, Tyler. First we got Ian Riccaboni, then we got Kerry Sulkin, and now we have one of the voices of Ring of Honor, especially right now with the women's tournament. We have Lenny Leonard joining us. Lenny, how are you, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. That's some good company I'm getting to be a part of.
Oh, and it's we're having fun doing it, man. We've gotten really lucky with a lot of cool names, and I guess that's where I'll start. I'm going to ask you right away. We've talked about this on the show several times. It is my opinion that right now, I'd say in the last 10 years, Ian Riccaboni is the greatest play-by-play man in the business. What's your relationship with Ian? How do you think he's doing right now? Are you close to the man?
We've gotten close over the years. We've only actually met a couple of times, but we became social media friends, and I've been a big fan of his work. He's been very, very complimentary of what Dave Prazak and I started commentary-wise in Ring of Honor, is kind of laying the foundation for what was to come afterwards with Kevin Kelly and Steve Corino, and now Ian and Caprice, taking it to a whole other level. And so we became friends via the internet, and we've met a few times. And to finally get to work with him was a treat for me, because I'm a big fan of his work. I think he's criminally underrated for how good he is. And he is the perfect voice and the perfect person for that product at this point in time. And I think that's one thing that's been that Ring of Honor has been very lucky about over the last years. And I think they've gotten the right voices for the right period of time for the company. Dave and I were, I think, the right guys to really first start doing serious, straight play-by-play and commentary when the product was in a lot of ways at its most serious and at its kind of zenith in the early days before television and everything. And then Kevin and Steve were the right guys to start the television product era of Ring of Honor. And now Ian and Caprice are the right guys for the regular weekly syndicated television plus pay-per-views. And so I feel I'm in really good company, have been like the first in what's now been a long line of really good commentary teams in Ring of Honor.
I couldn't agree with you more there. Yeah. And it's great to see you come back full circle and come back home to Ring of Honor. How did the whole process come about? Obviously you have a great history with, I hate to say women's wrestling because it's wrestling, obviously, but for the sake to keep things simple for the show with women's wrestling. So how did it come about to get you to come back to Ring of Honor?
Ian's been trying to get me in for a while, and most of it unbeknownst to me. He apparently, and he told me this after the fact, he was pushing really hard to get me on the Madison Square Garden show, WrestleMania weekend a couple of years ago. And they just, with everything that was going on and how many people they had there for commentary for that one night, they were bringing so many people in and out. They just couldn't find a way to make it work, which I'm actually probably glad that I didn't know about it in advance, because I probably would have been disappointed. Whereas now it's like, oh, that would have been really cool. But if I thought it was going to happen and it didn't, I probably would have been upset about it. So probably better that I didn't. But Ian's been trying behind the scenes for a while to find a way for the two of us to work together. And I don't know if it was that he mentioned it first or if it was Bobby Cruz, but the folks in Maria Kanellis Bennett who were putting it together were trying to look for a way to kind of make it different. What can we do to kind of drive some interest? So part of it was, bringing Lenny back after 12 years would be a nice story. To have him come back and kind of get to work with Ian and Caprice and be a part of it, which was really cool. The other part of it was, like you said, they wanted somebody who's been in and around women's wrestling for a while, because they wanted it to be taken seriously. They are really, I think, being very, very forthright in their desire to make this reboot of the women's division go well, and to be not just kind of a sidecar thing that they're doing and then in 6 months they're going to forget about it. I don't get the impression that that's the case at all. I really think that this is the start of something that they want to commit to long term. And Maria, to her credit, I think I've met Maria once before, and it was really just in passing years ago on a WrestleMania weekend where we were both doing convention stuff. But I know Mike as well, her husband, from his days on the Indies. So they were just like, hey, would you be interested in giving it a shot? And I'm like, absolutely, I'm happy to. It was just going to be the tournament shows. And then it kind of, as it was going on, they were like, hey, would you be interested in doing the Women's Division Wednesday stuff too, leading up to the tournament? And it kind of became a bigger and bigger thing. And the more they wanted to kind of throw on my plate, the more I was happy to do. And I had a blast. It was a great time. And I was really happy to be a part of it.
Which is awesome, because another person involved in that Wednesday show is a good friend of this show, Loufisto. Do you have a relationship with Loufisto at all? Do you look forward to working with her?
I do. I love Loufisto. We go way back, not just in Shimmer, but she was the longest reigning champion in Shine for down here in Florida for a long time. So she and I go way back. I've driven her to the airport many times after a show in Florida when she had a 5 a.m. flight and I had to get back home. So I would always drop her off at the hotel or the airport on the way after shows. So yeah, we go way back. And it's great that they're giving her an opportunity to be involved too. I know logistics are difficult for her now based on not just the border situation with COVID, but visa issues are obviously difficult for anybody on your side of the border trying to come over here when you've got a bit of a following and people know who you are. It's a double-edged sword in that it's great that everybody knows who you are, but they know who you are at the border too. So it makes it a little tricky.
Absolutely. Exactly. I kind of want to go back to a name that you were just talking about a second ago, and that's Maria. From on TV, we see that she's the face of the women's division there, and kind of in the general manager role there. How hands-on is she actually behind the scenes, though? Does she have a lot of influence in who's getting brought in, or is that just part of the story?
No, total shoot. She is deeply involved in every aspect of the women's division, and she has done a really, really good job. She is super smart. I was really impressed watching her backstage, just in how she was able to manage a lot of different moving pieces at once. She's great with the talent because she's been there. She's great with TV because she's done it. She's great with pay-per-view because she's done it. She's been able to take all of these years of experience in the WWE and at TNA and Impact, and really has been able to put it to use behind the scenes in a multitude of ways, just from logistics, from promos, from working with girls on their character. It's been really, really impressive to watch her. And I've been very, very impressed with how just tremendously talented she is on many levels. So
I'd like to, go ahead, Tom.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I'd just like to talk about the tournament for a quick minute, since that's one of the reasons you're back in ROH. And just to throw some names out, as we speak right now, as we're recording, we're into the semifinals, and it's looking like Alize versus Nicole Savoy. It's looking like Allison Kay versus Trisha Dora, Roxy versus Quinn McKay, and Max the Impaler versus Angelina. Now, already the matches leading up to this all have been fantastic. I've been following this more than the majority of other wrestling that's on right now. Has, out of all the names I just mentioned, anybody really stand out to you so far that you're like, wow? Like I know some names like Allison Kay, you're already very familiar with from your days in Shimmer and stuff. But did anybody really pop out to you going that, okay, she's a star?
I've been lucky in that I've gotten to work with everyone in the tournament at some point in my life, even Sumi. Right. I worked with Sumi on indie shows down in Florida a decade ago, a decade plus ago, probably. So I've been fortunate in that no one was an unknown to me coming in except for Maserati. But Maserati, I had seen bits and pieces of, but I hadn't really seen a ton. But Allison Danger does a lot out in Vegas, so she's very familiar with everybody out there. So she gave me kind of a bit of a heads up as to what to expect there. So no surprises from that aspect, but I was very happy that people were able to see how good Miranda Alizé and how good Roxy really are. And Roxy in particular, in that she's so young, but she's so polished. Everything she does looks good. She's got a great look. She wrestles well. She's got a great character that you really want to get behind as like that babyface underdog. That girl's going to be a star. That girl's going to be a star. And Miranda Alizé, I'm sorry. And Miranda Alizé, from the look, her gear, her presentation of herself, was tremendous. And honestly, I think in the first round, though, the one woman whose stock may have risen the most in a lot of people's eyes is probably Willow, and the match that she had with Allison Kay. I've been a fan of Willow's for a while too, but she has just got something as a lovable baby face that people just I think it was to her detriment that there wasn't a crowd there in the building for those shows, because if there was a crowd, she really would have gotten over huge, just because she has a way of connecting with people. She's always got a smile on her face. She's got a great story coming back from a broken neck a couple of years ago. So she really stood out to me as well.
Something
the one name,
go ahead, Mike.
The one name on a lot of people's lips right now, especially after her match this past week, is of course Max the Impaler. The thing with Max, I have to ask you, and I'm not criticizing anyone's decision, not even, and I'm definitely not criticizing Max, but I have to ask, in your opinion, does a Max the Impaler, does this gimmick, does this fit the ROH style, especially the current ROH style, moving forward after the tournament? Can you see a Max the Impaler continuing on in ROH and being successful?
I can, because I think you can do something with that character, because at the end of the day, when the bell rings, Max can go.
Yeah.
So it's not like, now if Max was all character and they couldn't go once the bell rang, then yeah, I think you run into an issue. But I think they can hold their own in there against anybody. I think you can tell a lot of stories with their power against someone else's speed, or just having Amy Rose by her side as well. There's a lot of stories I think you can tell. I think there's a lot of stories you can tell there. So I could definitely see them sticking around after this is all said and done.
Absolutely.
There's one thing I really love that Ring of Honor is doing with this tournament, is that they're giving a lot of people their first real big exposure on a bigger stage, with the exception of maybe an Angelina Love, who's obviously been to the dance a few times. What's the energy like backstage with all these girls? Are they hungry? Are they excited? Are they nervous? Like, are they ready to show the world who they are?
All of those things, I think, at once. It was a pretty cool locker room to be a part of. It's very much a team atmosphere. It was all for one and one for all, but you could definitely see that everyone in the tournament knew that this was an opportunity for them to make their mark. So they wanted it to be a good tournament, but they wanted their chance to shine at the same time. But it was very much a team atmosphere backstage, which in a lot of wrestling locker rooms is very much not the case. So it was cool. And it wasn't just the women within the tournament. I think ROH in general right now, they've got a really, really good vibe backstage from a team atmosphere, that you watch the pay-per-view show or you watch the TV tapings, and they have their area backstage where they've got the big screen and you can watch the show while it's going on. And everybody who wasn't either wrestling or getting ready for their match, or getting seen by a doctor or trainer after their match, they were in there watching the show, and they were popping for all the cool stuff, and they were like fans watching the show themselves. So it was pretty cool to sit there and just watch how everybody was pulling for one another. And when you don't have fans in the building, it can make it difficult to go out there and have to perform. And Ring of Honor, I think, to their credit, has done as good a job, if not a better job, than pretty much everybody when it comes to making sure that everybody on the roster was taken care of during COVID. Everybody on the roster was going to be as safe as they possibly could in the environment. They did a great job of working with the Maryland State Athletic Commission to make sure that they were following the most stringent protocols of anybody in wrestling. So I think a lot of credit goes from the top down to how they've fostered a really good environment backstage. It was cool to be a part of it.
I think it's really cool that they brought you back for the women's tournament as well. It kind of reminds me back in the day when WCW would bring Mike Tenay in to specialize with the luchadors, right? Is this something that we're going to continue to see after the tournament? Are you going to be sticking around Ring of Honor for a while, or is that kind of to be determined?
Yeah, we haven't talked about anything like that. I'm open to whatever. I know, COVID and the lack of revenue streams that the company's dealing with based on, not having fans in the building and things like that obviously makes, any kind of long-term expenditures kind of iffy at best. So we haven't had any conversations about it, but, when and if those conversations happen, I'm certainly open to listening to whatever, they come my way with. I had a ball doing it. I am fortunate in that wrestling was never my main gig. I've got a really good regular job that affords me the opportunity to go out and kind of be picky and only work a few different places where I feel like working. And if it's not the right fit, then I can just say no and not have to worry about it, because it's not wrestling has never been what's put food on my table. Thank goodness. Because I know it's a tough way to make a living, especially in the independent level. So I'm always open to talk should something, open up that way. But right now we haven't had any talks about anything.
Speaking of places you work, I want to get to your relationship with Dave Prazak in a few minutes. But before we go there, there's another man I see you mirror a lot. No matter where he goes, Lenny seems to follow, and that's Gabe Sapolsky. From Ring of Honor to Evolve, doesn't really matter. You and Gabe seem to have a working relationship a lot. Gabe, of course, has a reputation for being an angry man. Do you have any good Gabe stories for us?
Well, I've followed him everywhere he's gone except one place.
Hey, you did make it on the network, though.
I did. I'll always be able to hang my hat on that. So
yeah, you got that.
You know what?
Show. That's right.
Yeah, we did the 10th anniversary show, which really was the 10th anniversary of Dragon Gate, not really Evolve, but that's okay. It's a better story the other way around. It was about 6 months. It was like the 9.5 year anniversary for Evolve, but
what's that?
It made for a better story.
Way of a good story.
That's it. Good Gabe stories. I mean, there's a million Gabe stories, but I was fortunate for the most part to have avoided a lot of Gabe's kind of tirades. And I will also say Gabe the last time we worked together was 2019, or was it 2020? Maybe early in 2020. Gabe in 2020 was not the same Gabe in 2005 when Gabe and I first met. So credit where credit's due. Gabe changed a lot as a person as he got older. I don't know if it was just maturity, marriage, becoming a father, all of the above. Gabe was a much different person in 2020 than he was in 2005. But there was one time we were doing an FIP show down here in Florida, which was a DVD quote unquote product. And it was kind of like the sister promotion to Ring of Honor. Gabe would try out a lot of ideas and things down here that to see if they would work, and if you wanted to kind of bring them up to Ring of Honor as kind of like the main stage. And it's actually a story that Samoa Joe and CM Punk told in their shoot interview years ago about Gabe flipping out because I screwed up something and gave away a guy. Azrael was supposed to be a mystery partner for CM Punk later in the show, and I blew it in the open while I was running down the show. I just forgot that it was a surprise, and it just came out, and I knew it as soon as I said it. And you could, like, if you ever watch the DVD, you could see the look on my face. I'm just mortified because I know what's coming. And Gabe apparently went berserk backstage, throwing stuff. Now, bear in mind, there were 9 people in the building when this happened. I'm exaggerating by saying 9. It was probably 20, but there were not a lot of people in the building. Anybody who saw that show was going to see it on DVD. It's an easy fix. You could have made it go away. I ruined it for the 9 people in the building, but I did ruin it. Fair. That's on me. But Gabe's going just bonkers backstage, and he basically grabs Samoa Joe and tells him, go out there, just fucking choke him out right now. Just go out there and fucking choke him out. And Joe kind of like does a double take apparently and looks at Gabe like, are you fucking kidding me right now? And like, he's not going to do it. Fortunately, Joe and I have always gotten along. But also fortunate for me is that Ron Nemi and the Shane twins, who were the Gemini in WWE, were also on the show. And they are boys of mine from when I first started in wrestling. They basically broke me in. And Mike and Todd are, if you don't know who they are, they're 300-pound identical twins who literally could murder anybody they wanted to with their bare hands. And apparently Mike just kind of leans in to his brother Todd and Ron, and he goes, if Joe takes one step towards that curtain, we're going to murder everyone in this locker room.
Oh, shit.
And that was kind of the end of that.
Those are good friends to have, man.
And I don't think Joe heard it. It wasn't said to like Joe. It was just them talking to one another. But when they told me afterwards, and I was just laughing because I felt awful about it. And I'm just like, I'm a perfectionist. I never want to screw things up. So I think Gabe realized that after a while too, in that even later on, if I would mess something up, we would be able to talk about it. And just have a regular conversation. It was very little, just screaming or yelling or anything like that, because he knew that nobody wanted to get it right more than me. My job, and I was never a guy, and I'm still not a guy who wants to get himself over. My job is to tell your stories to the best of my ability. I don't ever want to try and get myself over. I didn't have catchphrases. I didn't have any of that stuff. I just called it straight. The best way that I could. And Gabe knew that, and Gabe appreciated that. So our relationship changed a lot over the years, and we became pretty close, which was good. I liked working with him again, because I had the ability to be picky about who and where I worked. And I only worked a couple of places, honestly. I worked Ring of Honor, and when that ended, I went to Dragon Gate and Evolve. And then, when that ended, that's pretty much it. I'm kind of bouncing around doing little things here and there, not a ton. But I'm okay. Like I was good with, I always wanted where I was to be a place that everybody wanted to watch. Like I always wanted to be in that spot. So I think on the indie level, for the most part, I did a pretty good job of being lucky like that.
Absolutely. And while you're on the topic of FIP here, perhaps the most famous match in FIP history, it's got to be CM Punk and Homicide, the Falls Count Anywhere. They head into the strip club. I know you were a part of that as well. How much of that did other people know other than Punk and Homicide? Did the strip club know? What are you thinking? Because if you go into a strip club, like there's some pretty big boys in there that don't take that shit either, right?
I didn't know when it was happening. I just followed them. In case I had to call a finish. So I just kind of like went with them, because I was only ring announcing at that point. I wasn't even doing play-by-play for FIP at that point. But I was like, well, if I have to announce a winner, I better be there. So I just followed them. No idea what was going on. And then for some reason, I don't know why it came to me while I got into the strip club. I just said, you know what? I'm going into the DJ booth, and I grabbed the microphone and I just started doing play-by-play over the house mic in the strip club, basically just calling it in the building. It was pretty crazy. It was a fun moment to be a part of, but I don't think anybody really knew what was going to happen other than, Punk and Homicide.
And the poor stripper that Punk yelled at.
Yeah. I think she got over it. I hope anyway. I hope.
You talk about working with Gabe. Is it true that you guys never really called any of the action live? It was always post-production?
It was post when we were in Ring of Honor. That was in post, because back then ROH didn't have the budget to be flying announcers in. They just didn't have the money. So we were fortunate in that Sal Hamaway, who owned Dragon Gate and Evolve and owns World Wrestling Network, he was doing the DVD production. So Gabe would fly down. They would have these all-night editing sessions during the weeks that FIP was running. And during those weekends, we would do FIP, and then we would do the last set of the ROH DVDs that were ready to be produced. So we would have like these all-night just sessions in Sal's living room with his poor wife, God rest her soul. She was a wonderful human being, and his kids trying to sleep in the house while Prazak and I are screaming at the top of our lungs at 4 a.m. in their living room. So yeah, we did all that in post. But then once we started Dragon Gate and Evolve, they wanted to do it live. They didn't want that post-production thing. They thought it was just a better feel, and I agree completely. It's much harder to do wrestling in post, with no crowd to play off of, no vibe in the building to kind of get your juices going. So it was difficult, but it was also, at that point, it was the only thing I knew. So I didn't really have any basis of comparison to know if anything was better or not, because I'd never done it any other way.
So doing these shows right now in the empty ROH arenas isn't that much of a stretch for you then?
No, I mean, it took me a match or two, I think, to kind of get back into the swing of it, because it's been so long since I've done anything in post. I've been doing it now for, 10, 12 years. The last 12 years, I've been doing it live in the building. So it took me a minute, but it's like riding a bike. It's pretty easy once you get back into it.
I don't know what you're allowed to tell us or even what you know, but when it comes to that, obviously this tournament has been pre-recorded. A lot of this has already happened, which is why there's no fans in the crowd right now. Once they catch up to the date and the next pay-per-view is in the bag, are we going back to seeing fans in the crowds at ROH? Do you have any idea?
I don't. It wasn't anything we kind of really discussed, because I don't know that I'm going to be there, so I don't know if I need to know it. Right. It's kind of a need to know basis, and I don't know that I need to know that. So.
Now you mentioned a while back that you didn't do a whole lot after your stuff with Dragon Gate and Evolve and stuff, but correct me if I'm wrong. Did you not do a lot of work with Dave and Shimmer?
I did some stuff with Shimmer. I didn't do as much as I wanted to. Okay. As there were a couple times we had conflicts that I just couldn't make work. Regular work commitments, but I always said if I was available to do Shimmer, I had an open invitation to come. So I did it as much as I could. And then COVID kind of got in the way, and there really hasn't been any Shimmer for a couple of years, other than the one show we did the one show at the Collective last year in October.
That's right.
When GCW ran the shows in Indianapolis, and I flew out for that. And that was the last time I got to call a show with Allison Danger. So that was the other reason is I didn't know how much longer Allison was going to be doing commentary and stuff too, because we were both kind of looking at, whether we're going to wrap it up at some point in the near future. So we're like, well, we got to do it one more time no matter what. So we both made sure to go out for that.
I don't suppose you were part of the summit, were you, here in Toronto?
I was not, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I was not. I wanted to be.
I won't lie. I kept my eyes out for both you and Dave that day.
I would have loved to. I would have loved to have been a part of that. I've only gotten to do. I think I've gotten to do 4 shows in Canada in my life. I think we've done 4 Dragon Gate. I think we did 4 Dragon Gate shows in Canada, or maybe 3 Dragon Gate and 1 Evolve, or maybe. I don't think I've done. It's 4, maybe 6.
So you were never
not as
part
many
of
as
it?
I'd like. I love.
So you're never part of any of the ROH shows that they came together?
No, they didn't.
Wow.
They didn't. Well, the first couple that they did there, we were still doing them in post.
Right.
And then when they started doing them in the building, I was gone by then. So.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to call some of the biggest matches in ROH history. Do you have any that stand out in your mind? Like, I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, were you one of the guys calling Joe and Kobashi as well?
Well, no, yes and no. So was always a sore subject with me. So we called Joe versus Kobashi for the commercial DVD, the Best in the World DVD that got put out in like video stores. but the actual ROH DVD release of the show, we didn't call it because Gabe felt that commentary couldn't add anything to it. So he just let the match go with no commentary. And and I understood why he did it. I didn't take it personally, but it always irked me just professionally. It's the biggest match in the company's history. And you're saying that, and you feel that Dave and I couldn't have done anything to make it better. That it always kind of was a sticking point with me. I mean, it was never personal on Gabe's part. It was just the way he felt as booker, that it's the way he wanted to portray that match and kind of present it. And I got it. But there was a small part in me that when we were doing the voiceovers for the commercial DVD, and I saw that match was on the list of matches we were going to call, I almost said I wasn't going to do it.
Wow.
Just out of principle, I was like, nah, I don't think we need to do that one. You've already got it in the can. Yeah, you've already got it in the can. We don't need any commentary for that. I can't make it any better. I think I did under my breath to praise, like, say, we're not going to make this any better. So I'm phoning it in. But then once it gets going, you forget all that stuff. And it was still cool to call it. I would have liked to crack at it when it was happening, but you don't always get what you want in life.
That's fair. Another guy that you got to call a lot of matches for, and the CM Punk, Mr. CM Punk, and he's back in the news again right now. Lots of rumors. Do you think we're going to see Punk return to the major stage here, like everybody says? And what was it like being around Punk back in the day? Do you know he was going to be this big of a star?
Yeah. So I guess first is I think he has to show up now, because if the hook's been baited at this point, everyone's bit. If he doesn't show up on Friday, the backlash is going to be enormous. I don't think AEW can afford to have dangled it the way it's been dangled and then not deliver. I think it would do irreparable damage to the company. So I think it's a done deal, and I think it's a good thing. He is a tremendously talented guy. He is probably the most confident person in his own abilities that I've ever met. I would not in a million years say that we were friends. I would say we were, if you ever watched Parks and Rec, we were, like Ron Swanson would say, we are workplace proximity associates.
I actually just finished watching Parks and Rec, so huge pop for me on that.
Yeah. So, and here, funny Punk story. So his last night in FIP, after he had signed and he had dropped the belt in ROH, he was finishing up with us in Florida and getting ready to report, and everybody's saying their goodbyes. He had a great last match. Everybody's like lining up to say goodbye, and he's being gracious and saying goodbye to everybody. And I'm just an announcer, so I'm not going to get in front of any wrestlers who are trying to talk to him. We didn't have that kind of relationship, so I'm going to go last. I let everybody get their stuff in. I just went about my business. It was time for me to leave. I said, "Hey, Punk, I just want to say, I really had a blast working with you. I think you're really talented. Good luck up there." And he shakes my hand, and he's unlacing his boots, and he doesn't even look up and just says, "Luck's for losers." And I was like, "See you around, buddy." And that's literally the last conversation that I've ever had with CM Punk. But here's the thing. He wasn't being, and if you know Punk a little bit, and I would only say I know him a little bit. He wasn't being a dick, and he wasn't being malicious. He really believes that. That's who he is. And you know what? Love him or hate him, he is who he is. He's true to himself at all times. If you like me, great. If you think I'm a dick, I don't care. But you always know what you're going to get, and you always know where you stand. So I respect the hell out of a guy like that. There's no he's going to buddy me to my face, and then he's going to shit talk me when I'm gone. He's going to shit talk you to your face. He's not going to glad hand you. He's not going to pretend to be your friend if he's not. And he's, if nothing else, he is honest as the day is long. Whether you want to hear the truth or not, I think you're always going to get the unvarnished truth from the guy. And I respect the hell out of a guy like that. So, I wish him all the luck in the world. I hope he makes all the money.
So now with your return to ROH, speaking of Punk, in your day, that's who you worked with. You worked with the Punks and the Bryans and the Samoa Joes. You worked with the probably the most successful and famous roster ROH ever had. Now you come back, and in my personal opinion, you're working with a roster now that has the potential to get that big. They have so much talent on that roster right now. With you coming in, and I know a lot of these guys you probably don't know. A lot of these are younger guys who out of all of them, probably the only guys you ever worked with were maybe the Briscoes.
No, I work with the Briscoes. I worked with Hot Sauce Tracy Williams and John Gresham and Rhett Titus and Jay Lethal. There's still a lot of guys on the roster that, there's still a lot of talent that I work with, even if not there, elsewhere.
Somewhere, okay. So out of this new batch of ROH guys and this new era of ROH, that I honestly think that if done properly in 5 years is going to be huge. Who's really standing out to you right now? Who do you look at right now and says, this is the future of this is the face of ROH right here?
Shane Taylor's a license to print money. Mm-hmm. I think, I think he kind of got caught up in the whole Keith Lee shadow thing when they were a tag team in the day, but he's a money promo. He is, he's got size. He's got believability. He is a license to print money. And a guy that I just put over on Twitter a little bit ago, tonight, in fact, is Jonathan Gresham. I think as a play-by-play guy, as a guy who's paid to watch wrestling, I think the biggest compliment I can pay, and I just actually tweeted this almost word for word. The biggest compliment I could pay somebody in wrestling is that I would pay to watch this person perform. I would pay to watch Jonathan Gresham perform every day of the week and twice on Sundays. He is that good. He's on another level.
I couldn't agree more.
I love Brody King. He's just got something. He's got this just wild charisma. He can go. He's big. I love the group with him and Dickinson and Deppen and Homicide. As a group, I'm super happy for Chris Dickinson to get an opportunity. He's a guy that he looked like he was close a few times, in his career in Evolve, where he was really knocking on the door of getting to that next level. And for whatever reason, it just didn't happen. But to see him take the ball now and run with it, not just in ROH, but everywhere he's worked, New Japan, GCW, the stuff for Bloodsport with Josh Barnett. He's been a big part of what they did there. I was lucky enough to call him and Mox in Indianapolis for one of those shows too. There's a lot of really, really good talent there that, not to coin a phrase they're already using for one of their stables, but the foundation for the next few years is very, very solid there.
Very true. Mm-hmm. Tyler, I have 2 questions left that are kind of silly, so I'm going to leave them to go home with. So if you have any actually professional questions left, please shoot them out.
I've got a few here still, just because there's so much to talk about with you here. I'm going to kind of bounce around all over the place then. We've talked a lot about the history of Ring of Honor, and lately there's been a lot of rumbling about a possible Ring of Honor Hall of Fame. If you had, the first ballot votes there, let's say you had 5 guys that you were going to put in, give or take, who do you think are first ballot Ring of Honor Hall of Famers?
I think Carrie's got to go in on the first ballot because that company was dead a long time ago without him. So Carrie for sure has to be there. I think, man, it's hard. There's so many people that are deserving, and to have to narrow it down to 5. I think you got to have Jay Lethal on there. I think you got to have the Briscoes on there. I'm counting them as one. I don't care.
No, I'm the same.
Briscoes, Jay Lethal, Carrie. I think you got to have This is where it gets tough because I think you've got 3 slam dunk names for 2 spots in Punk, Bryan, and Homicide. So
Joe as well.
Joe, yeah.
Yeah, and Joe. Like I don't know how you narrow that down to 5 without pissing a lot of people off, because there's probably a dozen first ballot Hall of Famers in that company. I think Adam Cole is a first ballot Hall of Famer there.
Absolutely.
I think Roderick Strong's a first ballot Hall of Famer there.
I think he's probably the most underrated talent in the history of the business.
I think Kevin Steen's a first ballot Hall of Famer there. El Generico, literally the first class of a Ring of Honor Hall of Fame could have 20 people in it.
Tyler Black,
absolutely. And you mentioned you did some work.
I don't know that I would say Tyler's a first ballot ROH Hall of Famer, because I think they dropped the ball and they didn't pull the trigger on him when they should have. I think Tyler.
You're probably right about that.
I think Tyler could have been huge there. I think he was big there, but he could have been huge. And I think they missed the boat by not pulling the trigger when they should have. They waited too long on him.
Absolutely. Well, somebody who's firing on all cylinders right now. You mentioned GCW a little while ago, is Nick Gage. What's your take on the Nick Gage phenomenon that's taken over the professional wrestling world right now? GCW's on fire. He's on AEW, Dark Side of the Ring. Have you gotten to be around Nick a lot?
Not a lot, but a little bit. I love the guy. I think he is a tremendous talent. He's got it. You talk about it when it comes to the wrestling business. Nick Gage has it. He has the ability, when he comes through the curtain, the crowd just is eating out of the palm of his hand. He can lead them wherever he wants to take them, and they want to go wherever he wants to bring them. And that's something you either have or you don't, and he's got it. He is one of the best deathmatch wrestlers in the history of the sport. I wouldn't say it's my favorite genre of wrestling, but I appreciate the guys who do it, because they take it very, very seriously. These are not guys that just go out there to crack up cars and cut themselves up and bleed all over the place. That's not what they're looking to do. Wrestling is at its core storytelling, and they're telling a very violent story, but they're telling stories. And the guys who are really, really good at it, you can tell. So guys like Gage and Matt Tremont, Ricky Shane Page, all of those guys are guys who they can wrestle any kind of match you want. They don't have to do death match wrestling. They do it because they love it. And I think GCW has done a masterful job over the last couple of years. I think that their top angles are better booked than just about any company in wrestling right now, in that nobody has done a better job of long-term storytelling on top than GCW. The way they've booked the title, the way they've done the stuff with Nick Gage, now what they're doing with Matt Cardona, it's been next level stuff. And Brett Lauderdale deserves a lot of credit, because he's got his finger on the pulse of indie wrestling in a way that not very many people have right now. He's in his zone when it comes to the stuff on top. It's really well done.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard that from Lenny Leonard himself. So the next time Tyler makes fun of me for being a GCW mark, we're going to go back to this interview every single time.
Hey, I agree with Lenny, though. I respect the hell out of what they do. But yeah, that's our running gag on the show, is apparently I'm an AEW mark and apparently Mike is a GCW mark. That's our running gimmick lately. But hey,
everybody's a mark for
awesome right now.
Yeah.
Everybody's a mark for something.
100%.
Really quick question, Lenny. Since we're on the topic of death matches, somebody that I know that you've worked with, any quick Necro Butcher stories?
He probably knows more about fantasy football than anybody I'd ever met in my life.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
I need to hit him up.
He could literally rattle off, college stats for a third string kicker from Arkansas like nobody had ever seen. So I try to remember that side of Necro Butcher rather than the stuff he posts on social media now. We'll just
yeah. All right.
Well, Necro Butcher was a part of one of my personal favorite angles in Ring of Honor, and that was Ring of Honor versus CZW. Do you know much about the behind the scenes on that? How these guys got together to work together? Because to me, this was like the epitome of two companies doing business together and both coming out better.
Yeah, I don't know a lot of the inner workings of that. That was pretty early on in my ROH stint, and I wasn't really inside that much back then. I didn't really get to know too much about what was going on behind the scenes. So I don't know how it came about or who approached who. I know that it was a blast while it was going on, and it was super hot, and it did for a while elevate both companies a lot. I think there was probably some money left on the table though when it was all said and done. I think it like every wrestling interpromotional angle, at some point somebody wants to kind of look out for their own interests a little more than the way the angle is going to kind of play out, and then sooner or later it ends probably prematurely, and I think that's what happened in this case. I think there was some everybody looking out for their own interests, and then money got left on the table as a result.
Absolutely. Another thing I want to talk to you about, I've got a couple more here. You've been very generous with your time. One of the career highlights for you has to be calling that Evolve show on the WWE Network. Can you kind of take us in the building that night? Because I think there was such a magical moment when Paul Heyman came out and cut that promo. It was very emotional. What's it like being inside of that famous arena with the man who made that arena so famous?
Well, it was funny because he hadn't been there since the last time he ran it with ECW, and it is a much different building now than it was then. They've spent a ton of money renovating that building, like millions of dollars have gone into making that a world-class facility now for wrestling and boxing and stuff like that. And he couldn't find the bathroom because it wasn't in the same place that it used to be. So somebody actually had to show him where the restroom was because he hadn't been there since they altered the building. So I got a chuckle out of that when he told me that backstage. But it was surreal when the lights went out and he was in the ring and the lights came back on. It was I can probably count on one hand the number of times I've gotten goosebumps in the middle of a show. That was one of them. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, that was an incredible moment. Absolutely. So I have two more questions here before I want to turn it over to Mike to take us home here. The first one, I want to talk about Dave Prazak. I want to talk about him at the end here, though. But before that, if you had any advice to give anybody who was looking to become a commentator, what kind of prep you do, advice for them when they're on the air, what kind of advice would you give to people that are just looking to start out in this game?
Don't say no to any opportunity. So if it means, showing up and helping set up the building and putting out chairs and setting up the ring, and make yourself useful, because announcers are on the indie level very rarely at the forefront of the mind of the people running the shows. It's almost usually a case where it's somebody who the guy who owns the company knows and can do it for cheap or do it as a favor. So not a lot of thought in a lot of places goes into it. But I would make yourself indispensable in other ways, and then kind of broach the subject of, hey, if an opportunity kind of comes up, this is something I'm looking forward to doing. And, I'm happy to help in any other way until something like that pops up. When it comes to preparation, I think over prepare is what I would say is probably your best strategy. Always have more information than you're going to need. Because you're never going to be able to get it all out, right? At some point, you're going to have to call what's going on in the ring. But having enough information to pick and choose from, and then knowing when to say things is almost as important as knowing what to say, right? If I'm calling, Tyler Black and Davey Richards, and I've got all this stuff I want to talk about for Tyler Black, but Davey Richards is the one that's in control, and Davey Richards is on offense, and Tyler Black's been getting his ass kicked for 5 minutes. That's not the time to talk about Tyler Black. Now you're talking about Davey Richards and why he's a killer and why Tyler Black's in trouble. So knowing, I think, and that's something that I think just comes through getting a lot of reps, right? You need to just have reps to kind of keep practicing and getting stuff down. Call stuff in your house, like just turn wrestling on your computer, turn off the volume, and just call it. Practice. And if you have a way to record it and then play it back and listen, that's always huge. If you can listen to yourself and critique yourself, that's huge. I will say this, I've got zero background in broadcasting. I have no formal training whatsoever. I work for a bank. I didn't study communications in college. I didn't study broadcast journalism, any of that. I'm a guy who's watched wrestling his whole life, and I kind of fell into it, and I ended up kind of falling upwards repeatedly in the last 17 years, where I just kept falling into different spots that I had no anticipation I was ever going to be a part of the wrestling business whatsoever. It kind of just happened one day out of nowhere. But I would definitely say, you know, don't be afraid to seek out other announcers that you respect, that you like their stuff. Hit them up, say, hey, can you watch a match of mine and tell me what you think, and take notes, be open to constructive criticism. I think that's huge for anything. I manage people in my regular job and day-to-day life. And the biggest thing for me when I'm looking to invest my time in somebody is the first question I'll ask myself about this person is, how coachable are they? Right? Are they going to be open to my feedback? Are they going to take the information that I give them constructively, and then try to find a way to absorb that information and then put it to use the next time that they go out to do something? So be open feedback, be open to criticism, and learn how to synthesize information, right? I'm going to take that information in and I'm going to try and find a way to use it the next time. And then the next time you send me something to look at, I should see what I showed you last time in your next performance. And if I don't, then I'm going to know that, you're just asking to ask and you're not really looking to improve or looking to get better. So I think being able to be coachable is huge. Don't be afraid of rejection, like I said, because there are a lot of places that are not going to spend a lot of money on announcing. They just don't have it in the budget. And I think that's another reason that I didn't really work a lot of places, is that nobody's flying announcers in, right? Like, very few places are doing that. Like, if a company gets big enough to where, they want to spend on announcing, then you'll see it. But for the most part, your local indie is not spending money on announcers, right? I'm not going to get flown to like 5 different places to do commentary. It's just not going to happen. So just, you're going to start local, everybody's got to start somewhere, but carry yourself as a professional, treat every match you're calling like it's WrestleMania, right? Because you never know who's watching. You never know who's going to see your stuff. Every day you are on a job, you are auditioning for your next job. So, be professional, be respectful. I think, another thing that I wish that I had learned earlier on in my career is talk to the wrestlers, right? Nobody knows how a guy or a girl wants to present their character better than the person themselves. So ask them, hey, what do you want me to put over? What do you want me to talk about? What's the story? And then get with the booker. You need to know what the business of the match is, and that's what the booker is going to tell you. What is this match supposed to accomplish, right? In the grand scheme of my booking, what am I trying to accomplish with this match? Where is it going? What's the story that you're trying to tell as a booker? and then get with the people in the match and find out what's the story you guys, girls, are trying to tell in the match. That's where it's, all right, I'm going to work her arm. I'm going to work his leg. I'm going to hit this spot. We wrestled 3 weeks ago and I did this. And now we're going to go call back to that spot and he's going to counter it. Those are the things that you're going to get by talking to the people in the match. And if you approach them the right way, they're going to be glad to give you that information, because at the end of the day, your job is to get them over. And that's the way I would always pitch it to people when I would ask them for information. Because at the end of the day, my job is to get you over. And if you tell me what you want me to get out, I'll give you what you want. I just need to know what you want. So, and Chris Hero is a guy who was always great about that. Even in my ROH days, like we would like almost beg guys for information, and Hero and Jimmy Jacobs was good about it. El Generico was great about that. And Nigel was really good about that too. And some guys were just like, yeah, Lenny, I know you've got it. Just go ahead and do what you do, which I took as a compliment. At the end of the day, give me something. But the more information you get, and then you can kind of pick and choose what you want to use. And then you've kind of got something to build on for next time too, right? Because if you're in your home promotion, you're going to call the same guys regularly. So I talked about this last match, and now I didn't mention this, so now I've got this stuff. So that way you're not just regurgitating the same stuff every single time that you're seeing people. So that, and what else? I've kind of rambled here with a bunch of stuff, but I think watch stuff and, take notes is really big too. Like I would watch stuff and I would write notes down about other people's stuff that I liked. All right, this was happening and they did this. That's pretty cool. I could maybe use that. And just like anything else in wrestling, if you're not stealing, you're not trying. Find something that somebody else who's good that they're doing, and then don't just out and out thieve it, but find what you like about it and then make it your own. Find a way to kind of tweak it and use your style and your voice to kind of make it work for you. So there's a lot of little things that, if I was a smarter businessman, I would write all of this stuff down and sell it to people, but I've never been a good businessman. That's another reason I've never worked in a lot of places in wrestling. I'm terrible at the business end of this. I'm like, I work for my friends, pay me fair and I'll be there. That's, I'm terrible at the business end of this. So don't ask me for any tips about that, because I'll get you nowhere.
Oh, that was a great answer. I'm not going to lie. Who was the person for you that you borrowed from? Who were your inspirations?
Oh, I stole from Joey Styles. I stole from Gordon Soley.
I was going to say Soley. I hear Soley in you.
Yeah, I stole from Soley. Soley was easy to get away with because he was so old that nobody knew who he was. They didn't really listen to him. So I could get away with stealing his stuff. Everybody knew Joey. What Joey and I think it'd be too hard to steal from Joey too, just because our styles were, no pun intended, very similar. He was maybe a little more amped up than I was, but at the end of the day, we called it straight, like a sporting event. So we were pretty similar. So I could never really steal too much from Joey, but he definitely influenced me. And I grew up watching just so much regular sports, like in New York City. I grew up as a kid, Marv Albert was doing the Knicks and doing the Rangers and doing football on Sundays. So he was always a favorite of mine. I love hockey. So, I would listen to guys on the radio do hockey too, or on television with the Rangers. I had Bill Chadwick and Jim Gordon doing hockey, or even when I would catch some, films of Hockey Night in Canada, guys like Foster Hewitt. And so I've always been kind of a bit of an announcing geek in that I love good announcing. Doesn't matter what the sport is. Like half the time I'll watch something, even if I'm not interested in what the sport is, just so I can listen to the announcer to see if they can hook me. Like I was up the other night at 3 a.m. watching Aussie Rules football, which I would watch here and there because I'm friends with Kelly Skater, who wrestled for Shimmer for years, and she's an Aussie, and she's actually a big Western Bulldogs fan. Shout out to the AFL fans that may or may not be living in Canada watching this. If you're fans of Aussie Rolls, I'm your guy. But I do. I doesn't matter what the sport is. Like, I want announcers should be able to kind of capture you, no matter, you know, how invested or involved in what it is you're watching. If they're good, they're going to reel you in.
Are you still a Rangers fan, or have you jumped over to the Panthers because you've lived in Florida for so long?
Well, no, I'm in Tampa, so I'm a guy.
So
but I'm always a Rangers fan first, but I'm happy for if I'm going to live here, the team at least better be good. So if I have to watch them regularly, so I'll always be a Rangers fan. In my Twitter bio for the longest time, it was Yankee fan, long suffering Jets fan, cried when the Rangers won the cup was in my Twitter bio forever. I bawled like a baby because I moved down here at the end of '93 and they won it in '94. So I was angry / happy because I wasn't there. And then I got pictures, and I have pictures of my cousin and all our friends at a bar on the Upper East Side with Messier and Leach in the cup. They were tanked, and I wasn't there. So and it's funny. I always joked with my ex-wife and that I cried when the Rangers won the cup, and I didn't cry when my first son was born.
That's amazing.
So Mike,
I am a fan. I am a fan of the Lightning too. They got a really tremendous organization.
Yeah, they do.
Canadian pronunciation for you there. They're a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
And don't give me any of that cap circumvention nonsense. The rules are the rules. They play by them.
I'm not going to argue with you, man. I'm not one of those guys. I'm not.
So,
I'm just kidding.
So Mike, I know you got a couple fun ones to bring us home here, but so I've got one more. I want to talk about Dave Prazak. In my opinion, Mike and I, we're not the type of guys that blow smoke up people's asses just because they're on our show. In my opinion, you and Prazak are in my top 10 favorite commentating duels of all time. Your guys' work in Ring of Honor is fantastic. I want to talk about how you guys developed your style together, your chemistry, and then I want to talk about Dave Prazak, who's probably the biggest unsung hero in women's wrestling, the women's evolution, if you'll call it. And I'd like to get into that after.
I'm actually going to start with that one because that's honestly the bigger story of the two. And I've said this on other interviews before, point blank, there is no women's evolution or revolution in pro wrestling without Dave Prazak. He single-handedly saved women's wrestling in this country. He single-handedly created a style of wrestling in a serious style of women's wrestling where they could be taken as credible athletes. And he deserves all the credit in the world for everything that the WWE is reaping the benefits of and AEW are reaping the benefits of now. He is criminally unsung when it comes to the importance of his place in women's wrestling in this country. And I will trumpet his virtues in the land of women's wrestling from here until Kingdom Come, because I will flat out say it. None of this happens without Dave Prazak. Women's wrestling was dead in this country until Shimmer came along, and he was fortunate in that he had a lot of people working with him that were just as dedicated, just as smart, and just as committed to ensuring that women were given the opportunity to be treated as credible athletes who could do everything that we're seeing now years before they had the opportunity. And if you just look up and down the rosters of both major companies, you're going to see Shimmer alums just the same way you're seeing Ring of Honor, Dragon Gate, Evolve alums up and down the rosters of all these companies. Yeah. Dave deserves far more credit than he's ever going to get.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
Now, sorry,
I was going to say, because I get a little fired up about this too. Like, he presents them as a wrestling product. There's no fancy catchphrase, the women's evolution. Like, that's the stuff that I get annoyed at as a wrestling fan. These women are so talented. Let their in-ring work speak for themselves. I don't want this catchphrase, Even in NXT, the women got over because of their work. And we've been seeing that for years and years with what Dave's been doing, Shine, Shimmer, all that stuff. So I don't want the hashtags. I don't want the catchphrase. I want to see them work. And I love to hear you say that about Dave, because I think it's criminal how little he gets put over for that.
And I would say whether he was, a really good dear friend of mine or not, it's the truth. But when it comes to, the announcing side with Dave, honestly, I listened back to those shows and I cringed. I don't think I was very good back then. I think Dave carried me a lot more than people give him credit for. Dave was already a lot more established as an announcer than I was at that point. I was still very, very new. So I leaned on Dave a lot, and I mimicked Dave a lot. If you want to talk back about people who I stole stuff from, I stole a lot from Dave. Usually when I was sitting right next to him, just because he was really that good. He made me better than I had any right to be at that stage of my career, and kind of helped me really kind of find my way. So I'll always be indebted to Dave for that. But our chemistry was just that we just got along. Like we enjoyed each other's company. We joked, we would hang out at FIP and we would joke around, and we would be in the locker room, we'd joke around, we'd talk online, and we joked around. We were friends and still are to this day. And even though we don't talk as much as we probably should, but that's, the nature of life. You kind of don't work with somebody regularly, so you kind of drift a little bit. And then COVID kind of, exponentially raised the bar when it came to that sort of thing too. I think everybody kind of just hunkered down in their own little worlds while all this stuff was going on. So, but I did get to talk to him today, which was good. So it's ironic timing. I just happened to talk to him today when I haven't probably talked to him in a couple of months, really. But yeah, it was easy with Dave, in that it was just kind of back and it was almost, it felt like a lot of times like we were playing tennis. It was just because we didn't really have defined roles, right? Because we were both very similar in that we were both, at the end of the day, really play-by-play guys. So we didn't have that, I'm the color guy, you're the play-by-play guy. I'm gonna call the moves and you're gonna give analysis, because I couldn't really do the color role at that time in my career because I just didn't have the experience in it. I could do it now easily, and I did it in ROH. For the women's tournament, it was more, I was brought to really do analysis than to do play-by-play. But we were both very similar. So it was almost like, I'm going to go, bang, and I'm going to volley it to you. And then Dave's going to go, and then it's back to me. And it was just kind of like back and forth, and it was seamless in that we both knew when to give each other an opening. We very, the one thing I was always proud of is that if you listen to an ROH show, we very rarely talked over each other. Like there was almost never a time that I can think of where we were both just kind of like yelling over each other at the same time. It was very much Dave, Lenny, Dave, Lenny. It was very smooth, very seamless. It wasn't like we needed hand signals or stuff. It was just an unspoken thing, in that we very quickly were able to develop a cadence, and we just kind of understood when I was going to talk and Dave knew when it was his turn to go, and it just kind of happened organically, and it was very easy. It was a lot of fun. I was disappointed when it ended the way it did, because it was right about the time that the HD Net deal was going on with Ring of Honor, and HD Net, the people who had approached Ring of Honor with the deal, they had already had Mike Hogwood in the bag. Like they basically were friends with him and worked with him years ago. And they were like, hey, how would you like to call a wrestling show? And he was like, yeah, I'll do that. That's cool. And then they went to ROH and said, hey, we want to put you on the air. Well, they didn't need three of us at that time. They didn't really have the money again to be paying all three of us. So I was the guy in Florida. I was the guy who was kind of the odd man out. And I was really almost a package deal also with Sal, who was producing the shows. And he was in the middle of his falling out with ROH over some money and some stuff behind the scenes that was leading to him going and starting Dragon Gate and Evolve with Gabe. So it was kind of just when Sal was gone, I was gone too, kind of thing. It wasn't like anybody called me and said I was fired, or nobody called me and said you're getting released. I actually hadn't even had a contract for like last, I want to say the last 2.5 years I was there, I was kind of working on a handshake. So it wasn't like anybody released me or wished me best of luck on my future endeavors or anything like that. It was just one day I was there and the next day I was gone, and that was it. And then, and funny, I wasn't even really the first choice for Dragon Gate and Evolve. Gabe wanted to go a different direction, actually, because he just didn't want it to be like, all right, we're just doing ROH all over again, but with Japanese guys. So it's going to sound the same. It's going to look the same. He didn't want to do that. So he was actively trying to find someone else. But he wasn't able to find anybody that he thought was going to do the show's justice, or that he trusted to kind of be able to get across the presentation he was looking for. So even though I was still with ROH at that point, he asked me, he goes, hey, I don't know if you're interested. I don't know if you're worried that you're going to get heat. He's like, I got a spot. If you want it, it's yours. Are you interested? I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely interested. And I said, well, I'm going to give ROH the courtesy of just giving them the heads up. I'm not going to just bounce. I don't know if there's going to be heat or not, but it is what it is. If there's heat, there's heat. I don't really care. I'm doing it. So yeah, I'm in. I said, lock it in. I'll be there. And then I talked to Adam Pierce, who was booking after Gabe had gotten let go. And I said, hey, just a heads up. Not sure if there's going to be any heat over it. Not sure if, you guys are going to not want me to do it. But I basically said, considering Brian's doing the show and Brian's a much bigger deal than I am, I didn't think it would be a problem for me to say yes. So as long as you don't have a problem with Brian, I'm pretty sure you won't have a problem with me. I just wanted to, do you the courtesy of giving you the heads up that they asked me, and I'm going to say yes. And he's like, nope, no heat. You do you. I appreciate you reaching out. Adam's always been great to deal with, and I'm super happy for all his success. He's a great guy and another unsung hero in ROH as well for a lot of time, both in and out of the ring. So yeah, it just kind of happened that as soon as my time in ROH was ending, this Dragon Gate and Evolve just kind of opened up, and I just walked from one spot to the other, and it was it was very seamless. So I was pretty lucky. But I did miss working with Dave a lot, and the couple of times we've gotten to do stuff since then have been just an absolute blast. And it's like no time has passed whatsoever. Whenever we just stick a microphone between the two of us, we're just going to go. And we got to do some of the collective stuff, and I've done some Shimmer stuff with him as well. And it's always great whenever I get to work with Dave. And like I said, I wish that I was as good then as that's an awful thing to say. I wish that I knew as much then as I know now. I'm not going to say I'm as good as I am now, because I don't think I'm that good still. But I wish I knew then what I know now. I think we would have blown anybody in wrestling away if you would have put Dave and I with our knowledge now back then. And yeah. I don't think there's any team anywhere would have touched us.
All right, so just to cap her off here, again, thank you for all your generous time. A couple of fun little things here. I know that you mentioned growing up in New York, and I know during your time in New York, you had at one point had a job working concessions at Madison Square Gardens. I know that you were there the night of the 1991 SummerSlam. So my question to you is there any other memorable wrestling events, boxing events, concerts that stick in your mind that you were there to witness while you were working?
Two things jump out. One was at that SummerSlam, I was walking around downstairs near the locker room, and Brett was down there, and I was walking by him to go to where the concession people change. Is very near where the other locker room is. And I'm going to get changed, and I'm coming out, and Brett's in the hallway, and I go, hey, Brett, how's it going? He's like, hey, how you doing? I said, I'm like, good luck tonight, man. I said, a lot of people have been waiting a long time for this one. I said, it's going to be good to finally see you get one. And he just kind of winked and didn't want to let me in, but I kind of let him know that I knew what was going to happen tonight. And he was like, thanks. And then he goes, hey, do you know who my dad is? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, have you seen him? And I'm like, no, I haven't seen him yet. And he's like, well, he's like, do me a favor. If you see Stu, please tell him I'm looking for him. So like for the next hour, I was roaming around the bowels of Madison. Yeah, roaming around the bowels of Madison Square Garden looking for Stu Hart, and I couldn't find him. But the other thing that always remembered that always makes me laugh is I was never really what you would call a Grateful Dead fan. I'm still not. But I understand their following and the type of people that follow them. And the Garden booked them once that summer for like 12 straight nights. And it was 12 nights of Contact High and people with the munchies. So I made a fortune.
Yeah.
I made a fortune, but literally, like, you couldn't pay me to listen to a Grateful Dead album now because of that. Like, not in a million years.
That's hilarious. All right, my last question for you. See, I grew up in Northern Ontario, Canada, right here. I would not be repping my home territory if I didn't ask you about your fascination, fandom of a little show here called Letterkenny.
Oh, come on. How can you not love Letterkenny? It's
I didn't think Americans were into it. I don't know a lot of Americans that really like it. So when I heard and I do follow you on Twitter. I saw you mentioned on Twitter a couple of times. I heard you on Kevin X podcast telling him about it. What got you in the show? What made you fall in love with the show? And have you met any of the guys? Because I know Trevor Wilson's a huge wrestling fan.
I have not ever met them. It is I definitely want to. They're redoing the live shows.
Yeah.
So they're going back out on tour, but they're not really going to be anywhere near here. So I'm trying to figure out a way to make it to one of the live shows because I definitely want to. I'm also going to try to use Allison Danger as my hook to meet Kay Trevor because he follows her on Twitter now.
Right.
So Danger may be my in to try and hook up with some of these guys somehow because I don't remember who. I want to say it was Danger who turned me onto it, but I remember reading Alexa Bliss talking about it on Twitter like really early on. And I think it was somehow between Alexa Bliss and Allison Danger and Dave Puente, who was the camera guy for Shimmer as well. We have like a group chat. They kind of like turned me onto it, and I was hooked immediately. So my family actually came to America through Canada. Like my mother's side of the family. They immigrated from Ireland through Canada, through New Brunswick and St. John's. So like I have very near roots in Canada. I'm a huge hockey fan. So I'm as close to Canadian as I can get and still be American. In fact, I would probably trade citizenship yesterday if I could. For a myriad of reasons. But so I was immediately hooked. And I was a Degrassi fan as a kid. I'm big on all things Canada. So yeah, I just was immediately hooked. The writing is, granted, it's dick and fart jokes. I get it at the end of the day, but the banter is just really well done. The speed and the back and forth is just really, really well done. There's a couple of misses here and there in some episodes, but I think that's any series. Nothing is going to be great every single time. But it just hooked me immediately, and I was all in very, very quickly. And I think Kay Trevor Wilson is one of the funniest guys I've ever seen. I could watch his bit on Captain Crunch every day without fail, and it'll still make me laugh every single time. And Mark Forward is a genius as well. So I will sing the praises of Letterkenny to anyone and everyone at every opportunity, although still recognizing it's not for everyone. But I don't know anyone that I've turned onto it that hasn't liked it on some level, at least a little bit. Even my mother-in-law, who is, as close to being born with a stick in her anus as you could possibly get. And God love her. She's a wonderful woman. And I can say this, I know she's never going to see it. She's a wonderful woman, and I love her to death. And if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have my wife and my beautiful children. So props to her. But even she likes it.
Yeah.
And she was literally a librarian. All right. If you want to know how straight-laced this woman is, she was literally a librarian. So even she thinks it's funny.
Unfortunately, here everybody seems split. You're either a Trailer Park Boys fan or you're a Letterkenny fan.
Yeah, I was gonna say, hit two of the big three. Two of the big three: Trailer Park Boys, Letterkenny, and Degrassi.
Exactly.
What about Kim's Convenience?
Oh, corner gas
and
well,
corner gas
and corner gas is.
Lance Storm,
big corner gas.
Yeah,
he's a big corner gas guy.
And don't forget the littlest hobo.
There you go.
You know, I was I'm trying to remember, what was the movie? Oh God, she was Megan Follows, the girl that played Anne of Green Gables, was a goalie, and Rick Moranis was a hockey coach. It was like a CBC movie, and it's going to drive me crazy that I can't remember the name of it. And now I'm going to have to look it up while we're on the air, and I'm going to show you how I can stretch and pretend that I'm actually talking about something when I'm really not. Because Rick Moranis was a hockey coach. She was like a girl goalie, and it was Hockey Night, 1984.
Yeah.
It's called.
Right.
It was 1984. It's called Hockey Night. And the goalie the girl goalie becomes like the star of the team, becomes best friends with the young junior center, Sidney Crosby-esque type goal scorer who wants nothing to do with a girl on the hockey team, and then romance ensues. Nothing like a little Canadian teen melodrama to bring us all together.
We got all the home runs here in Canada, eh?
Yeah, I love it. I haven't been in far too long, and you also had my favorite tag team of all time, the Canadian Ninjas, Nicole Matthews and Portia Perez.
There you go.
Right.
Well,
whether it's ROH or Shimmer or who knows what, I hope to see you at a show here in Canada eventually, one of these days.
First round's on us, okay?
You and me both. I'm excited, and even if I just get up there on vacation, my son, actually, my middle child is 14, and my mother-in-law takes the grandkids the year that they turn 13 every summer. Whichever one of them turns 13 that year, they get a trip anywhere in the continental United States they want to go from Florida. So my kid picked Seattle. He wanted to go all the way across country, as far away as he possibly could. But they were going to go across the border into Vancouver and Victoria for the day. But the border wasn't open yet by the time he had to take his trip. So he missed out because of COVID. So my kids all want to go to Canada. I miss Canada. I'm going to make it happen at some point. I got to get to the Hockey Hall of Fame, or I'm going to be I'm going to be disowned as a hockey fan.
45 minutes away from us. We'll give you the tour.
Yeah. And come on here and watch your Rangers beat the shit out of the fucking Leafs.
Well, if you think I'm paying $250 for Upper Bowl, you can suck my
back. Lenny, before we get Mike to take it home, why don't you tell people where they can find you on social media?
Just Twitter at WWN Lenny Leonard. And I just never wanted to change the handle because I still do some stuff with WWN. I'm still doing Shine. And I was doing like the Eddie Kingston Grindhouse. So it's not worth losing 3,000 followers to change it just to Lenny Leonard. So, and needless to say, I couldn't the one good thing is that I can't vanity search ever, because all I get are Simpsons cartoons, GIFs if I do. So yeah, I have to blame Ron Nemi for that. He's the guy that ran IPW down here when I first started, and he couldn't remember my shoot last name, so he basically just started calling me Lenny Leonard, and it stuck, and I could never get rid of it. So 17, almost 18 years later, here we are at WWN Lenny Leonard, and you can hear me complain about American politics. You can hear me bitch about the Yankees and Giancarlo Stanton. You can watch me cry about the Jets being awful every football season. And you can probably watch me make fun of Larry Dallas. That's pretty much all I do.
You can
on
also
Twitter.
see him debating with a friend of the show who does our theme music, Doug Doucette, about the Jays and the Yankees.
Wow. Yeah, I like Doug. He turned me on to Alex Manoah for my fantasy team, so I got to thank him for that. I was able to stash him in the minors while I saw him in AAA, thanks to Doug. So
there you go. That's all we're putting you over, though, Doug. His head will get too big.
Yeah. Hey, we play his music every single week right here, so we've put him over enough. All right. Well, thank you so much, Lenny. We're so happy to have you here. Thanks a lot for doing this. Until next week, guys, we've been counted out.
Cheers.